Hello again everybody, welcome back to Crafts by the Bow. This is my second video using the Nest of Christmas paper pumpkin box from last year. And in my first video I showed you these two cards that was straight from the box. I didn't change anything, I made them just as the instructions showed. But I'm going to make an alternative card, and what I'm going to use is one of the beautiful envelopes, the little piece of green card that came out of the middle of here that you don't need for these cards. So it's going to be spare anyway. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to use a couple of the die cut birds and maybe the greenery. And I'm going to make a window sheet card. So here I've got all the sizes and everything that you need. So if you want to make this, you can. And at the end, I'll show you a different way to make it if you don't have this kit. So I'm starting off with a piece of real red, 4 1/4 by 9 1/4. And I'm going to score this at 1 3/4. So I'm popping it in the trimmer here. Make sure I get that blade out of the way. So 1 3/4, and then I'm going to cut it at 7 1/4. And that might seem a really strange base to use, but it actually, you save a little bit of cardstock and it makes a really nice base. So let's pop that down. And I'm going to fold over the score line. And just with a bone folder, I'm just going to press it right down. And I'm a little bit heavy-handed when I cut with a trimmer, so I like to go over some of the edges as well. Okay, and so this is going to make our base card. You also need a piece of white at 5 1/4 by 4, but instead of using a piece of white, what I've done is cut up the envelope. So I cut off this piece to start with. Let me see where I've hidden that. Here we go. So I cut that piece off, and then I cut a little edge on each side. And I made it so that this piece of the envelope is going to be the 5 1/4 by 4. And that's going to go inside our card. If you don't have these envelopes, I'll show you on the second card that I've already made that, you know, you can make something just as pretty. You don't have to have the envelopes. So that's for our inside, that's for our envelope. And then this is the little piece that we cut out. And this is going to make these DSP or card layers. So I need a piece that's going to be 4 by 1 1/2 and 4 by 1 3/4. So I'm just going to trim this down. And I'm going to make it 4 inches across. So that's only a tiny little bit that you cut off, but we don't need that piece. And then I'm going to cut this down so that it's 1 1/2. And the remaining piece will be 1 3/4. So we've got those two pieces. And I would have liked this to have been like a patterned designer series paper, but it isn't. So I'm going to put a little pattern on it. And what I'm going to use is that leaf stamp that we had from the kit. So let me just get you the stamp picture. So it's this one. And I'm just going to put a little bit of a design on here. Nothing much, but just something to make it pop a little bit more than just the stripes. So, doesn't matter, you know, where you put the stamp pieces or what you decide to put on there. But I just wanted a little bit of something. And can you see how now it just sort of gives you that extra little dimension? You won't see all of this because we will have a little bit of our card covered up. And so, you know, you might only see a few little fronds or a few little leaves, and that's going to be okay. Now let's put the lid on our shaded spruce there. So this is the DSP or card layer. If you didn't want to use a DSP and you didn't want to use something like this, you could emboss a piece of cardstock and cut it and use that perfectly the same. And then the last thing we need is a piece of window sheet. And it's only a small piece, and I've cut it to 4 by 3. Just double checking. Yeah, 4 by 3. And that becomes part of the focal point of our card. So let's start and put our card together. I am going to have the card like this with that window sheet in the middle, and then these pieces will go over, and then we're going to create a focal piece on the front. But before we do that, what I want to do is just find, oh, where's my inside piece? Here it is just find a place where I can stamp, and I want to stamp through the middle here. The easiest way that I know how to do that is to put your card, your white card, inside and line it up exactly how it will be when we glue it down. So it has a border all the way around. I'm going to close that, oops, let me make it straight. I'm going to close that top up. I'm going to put this on as though it was attached, flush with the bottom, and just with a pencil, I'm going to make a little pencil line across and across. Oops, it's not very straight, but that doesn't matter, because now I know that my stamped sentiment has to fit in this little bit. If I just used a piece of card, I might tend to have it too high or too low or not in the middle, and then it's not quite right. So for me, this is an easier way to do it. So let's start and attach all this together. So the first thing you attach is your window sheet. And sometimes you'll find that you put window sheet underneath the front, and you might put a piece of designer series paper on the back to cover over that and a piece over the front. But we're going to attach ours to the front. And I'm going to use tear and tape, and I'm going to put a piece of tear and tape across the top width of the window sheet. And I'm going to put it fairly near to the top edge, just leaving a small border. So I'm going to do that at the top, and I'm going to do that at the bottom. Now, once this is attached, you won't see the adhesive because our card and our designer series paper that we've just made is going to cover it up. Okay, so I'm going to take off the backing here. I'm going to push my card front down, pop that bottom piece on, and I'm going to attach it over the top, over this gap. And I'm going to try and have it so that it's an equal border at the left and the right. Doesn't matter about the space at the top at all. We're not looking at that. Okay, then I'm going to press that down, and then I'm going to take the backing off the bottom, pop this piece of card down as though it was laid and it was the card base folded over. And I'm just going to close this like you would, close a door or close a gate. Just hold it down, press it, and now I know that our window sheet is in the right place. It's going to be covered over by this. You won't see the tape underneath. So I'm going to add this next. And because it's got window sheet on, I find that the liquid glue doesn't adhere very well to that. So just one edge, I'm going to put tear and tape back on. The rest of it, I will put my liquid glue. But you could do tear and tape across all of it if you wanted. And the rest, I'm just going to pop this. You can even put liquid glue over the top of tear and tape, and then it works so that you can still move it about a little bit. I often do that when I'm scrapbooking or if I'm making an album or something, and then I can just wriggle the paper around a little bit. Okay, so there we are. That's it glued down. When you open it, there's no seams to see, there's no adhesive to see, nothing to cover up on the inside. So I'm going to do the same again with this. I'm going to put a little bit of tear and tape on one edge and then just glue it down so that it looks like this. So let's see, let's pop our tear and tape on. And as I said, you could put tear and tape over all of it if you wanted to. That's not a problem. Just I like to be a little bit more economical with it. Although I did once see that it worked out more economical than using glue for some people, because they wouldn't put tear and tape all the way around. They'd just use small pieces. Oops, I just put that in the middle. There we go. Yeah, they would only use small pieces and it worked out quite economical for them. For me, I use a lot, so it's not all that economical. Okay, so there's our front finished. Now, for the inside, here's our piece. And now, can you see that where I put those pencil lines, this is the piece that is showing through the window. So I'm going to do a stamped image here. And I'm going to use one of the stamp sets from the Nests of Christmas set. So let me put that there. I still have this on that says Joyful Thoughts to You this season. So I think I'm going to use that one. That's from the cards that I made earlier. So I've got Shaded Spruce because that's the colour that came with the kit. That's the one that matches. And I want it to be over to the left-hand side because I want to put something at the right-hand side. So if I put this as far over to the left as I can. There we are. I've got green all over my fingers, look. That shows you've had a good crafting day. Okay, and then I'm just going to get a little rubber, a little eraser. I forget you don't call them by that English name. Okay, so that's the little erased pieces. Let's get rid of that. Okay. Now I can attach this to the inside. So a little bit of glue, a little squiggle. And see how pretty that is as an insert. I would have loved to have had the rest of the envelope piece on, like where you go around the corners here, but it didn't fit. But I think it looks lovely just with that little bit, because that's like a metallic shiny foiled piece. It just picks up some beautiful colours. Okay, so here's our window card, ready to stand, ready to make, just ready to decorate the front. And I have got all of these little birds and things cut out, and I want a piece that will go sort of from the bottom up to the top. And when I was first measuring it, it was hard to get a piece that would bridge the gap really. So what I decided was I would use this larger piece and the cardinal. Let me put that like that. And so the cardinal's head would attach to the top, and this piece would attach down to the bottom. So I'm going to glue this on first. I'm only putting glue here. I'm just going to be mindful that if I put glue on there, it's going to stick on the acetate, and that's not what we want. So I'm just going to scribble a bit down there. I want to make sure that it fits onto the base. It's not hanging over too far. This bit isn't glued, but that doesn't matter because on the inside, you can just see that it's the white card. There's no glue to be seen or anything. And then I'm going to pop this little cardinal in here. So I'm only going to put glue on the top of his head and his tail and a little bit round his tummy so that it fits. You could put this on with a dimensional. That would look really nice. Oh, let's do that. Let's put dimensionals on. So I've got my small dimensionals and a few of my bigger ones. So I'm going to put one on his head and I'm going to put it far up at the top just to make sure. Can I get all of that on? I'm going to check underneath. Yeah, I can. So I just need on his tail, I think. I won't bother with his tummy. This is a little bit narrower, so you could put one of the strips or you could put smaller dimensionals on. I'm going to put part of a strip, I think. That way it's all in a nice straight line. I'll take that backing off. Oops. And then I want to make sure that the whole of this dimensional is hidden like this. So let me just place that there and see. Oh yeah, that's plenty of space. I could actually move it over a little bit and move it down a little bit. Okay. And let's see if that fits now. Yep, that's going to be perfect. Oh, I like it with the dimensionals. Okay. So once you open the card, you have this nice little matching piece to the greenery. If you wanted to add other little bits of bling on there, you could do. You could add some like gems, or you could put another little sentiment up there. But for me, that's all I want to have on there. So just a quick and easy little window card. I like that you can see the sentiment through here, and you've got space to do your writing. If you wanted to cut more of the green, you could certainly do a little layer in here as well, just to set it off, but you don't have to. Now for my envelope, remember I had the rest of that piece. This envelope flap is not quite the same as our normal envelopes, and it's not quite the same size. So what I thought I would do is, I've found this little scrap. It's not cut straight on one edge, but I found this little scrap of real red, and I'm going to lay it across the very top of my envelope. And then this one, I'm just going to put over the top, so it looks like you have a little stripe on there. I'm going to add just a little bit of glue all across the top of that flap. And then let me find which is the straight edge, that one. I'm going to pop it on at the top. Just make sure I've got it straight, there we go. Squash it down. Oops. Squashed it down and I moved it down. There we go. I don't want it to stick out at the back, or at the front, that would be. There we are. And then I'm going to just trim it so that it fits over the flap. And sometimes what I'll do with these envelopes, if I've got lots of stripes or strips of designer series paper, I'll make a whole pattern of strips going across. Now this, I'm going to offer it down as far as I can to the bottom, making sure that it goes over the red as well. And I'm not going to be worried that this doesn't fit all the way across, because again, I'm going to trim it. So I just want to make sure that it goes all the way across like that. Okay. And then I'm going to glue this strip rather than glue the envelope flap, which is what I normally do when I'm putting designer series paper on. I'll put the glue onto the flap, but for this I can't, just because it's a different shape. I want to make sure I've got plenty of glue on the edges. Okay. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom of the flap, pop that on, just go over with my bone folder, just to make sure it's on. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the whole flap to the same shape as the envelope flap that I've just added. So, and then I'm just going to make it so that it looks pretty seamless and like it's meant to be that shape. Oops, let's go around that red. There we go. And honestly, I don't think anybody would even notice that it's not quite the same shape because you've trimmed it. And as my dad used to say, a blind man would be pleased to see it. So I've got a little bit of red showing there. So I'm not worrying too much there. Okay, So there's our nice matching envelope. The rest of the envelope, that's this piece, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this down and I'm going to use it as an insert on one of my other cards because it's quite a nice quality paper. You can stamp on it easily. And so I don't want to waste that. I'm going to keep it. Right. So there is our window sheet alternative. And then let me show you what I also made. Just let me pick it up. So if you don't have that kit, that's okay. You can still make this card very similar. So here is, let's pop that there. Here is my card using the Nests of Winter Designer Series paper. Now this is a paper from last year, but it's carried over into the new catalogue. I ran a class on this last year and it's such pretty paper to use. So it's the Nests of Winter 164183 and it has some really pretty paper in there. I just happen to have used a lot of the patterned DSP. So it has lots of bits. And you see how this piece matches the paper pumpkin ones. So I thought when I made another card, I might use this with the piece that came out of the second card from the kit. Okay, so it has lots of different ones. And these little birds are cut from that piece of paper. And all I did was choose a bird and fussy cut it. I was going to go with this one, but I realised that it was a little bit too small for the gap between the window sheet. But I just cut. I added some of my scraps because I only have scraps of this paper left. This would be a nice one to use horizontally, but I only had it cut on the vertical. But that's what I used, some little pieces of this. And because I didn't have a nice piece of envelope to put on the inside, what I did was I added 2 little strips more of the paper and I cut out another one of the little tiny birds so that I had some interest on the inside. But because I'd used this image, I couldn't get a stamp here. So what I did was I put my stamp on the front and I didn't stamp it. I used something from one of these ephemera packs, the Greetings for All kind of packs. These ones are not adhesive and I've attached it with dimensionals. And then I used these little cherry cobbler and pearl adhesive backed berries, which are also back for this year. They're last year's, but they've come back. I don't know if they're online or in the catalogue. I honestly can't remember. And I used 2 of the single ones on 2 little berries here, and I put the set of 3 here. If you don't have this one, then this is another one that's really, really nice. And I'm using this at the moment in one of my Christmas card classes and tag classes. And let me just take one out so I can show you. These are all white and gold, and they have adhesive on the back. So you can take the adhesive off. It's quite a thick card, and you can use it like a sticker, or you can put dimensionals on. If you put dimensionals on, I always take the sticker label off the back, this layer off the back, and then put my either embossing buddy on to get rid of all the sticky, or just put my dimensionals on so that it sticks easily. But that would have been nice, and I could probably have got one of these on the inside, one of the smaller ones, like these joy ones, or the ones that say from our house to yours. That would probably have fitted in there. So I hope you give the window sheet card a try, even if you're not making it with scraps from your paper pumpkin. If you're cutting DSP and fussy cutting something, it's a fun little card to make. It doesn't use a lot of cardstock for the card base either. So thank you for watching me, and I hope you'll give that a try and send me a picture if you do. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye bye.